My name is Bob McDonald. I'm the host of Quirks and Quarks, the weekly science program on CBC Radio, heard Saturdays at noon and Mondays at, I think, 10 o'clock, and online at cbc.ca/Quirks. I'm also the science correspondent for The National on CBC Television, and I do reporting for CBC News Network as well. I'm also an author. I've written 4 books. I'm just about to publish my 5th. And what else? And I love to travel, and I've been a science journalist longer than any of you have been alive. My first job communicating science to the public was in 1973, so I've been at it for a while.
So what's unique or special about being a science journalist in Canada?
Science itself is news. There's always new stuff happening, and I feel very, very fortunate to do what I do as a science journalist. Almost every story that affects people has science behind it. And Canada does great science. We're tops in the world. And we have an opportunity to share our science with the world in many different subjects. Canada we're a wonderful country, and we have great universities, and I'm very proud of that.
How did you come to work in science journalism?
My entire career has happened thanks to people who opened doors of opportunity for me and said, hey, why don't you try that? You'd be good at it. And for some unknown reason, I always said yes, even though I wasn't actually qualified to do it. And my first opportunity in 1973 came at the Ontario Science Centre in Toronto. They were looking for people who were good communicators to do shows that they have. Out of that came media requests to appear on news programs, especially when they first landed on Mars in 1976. And when I went on the news that night to talk about it, they said, hey, you're really good. You want to come back and be on the news and do like science stuff? I said, sure. So I started appearing on the news, which I still do to this day. I decided to become a freelance writer broadcaster and just threw everything out to the wind. And that's been my life ever since.
Would you be able to kind of outline in a basic sense what your journalistic process is and where you begin and how that transfers into where you end up?
Well, I'm one of a team of 5. There are 4 producers. They're in Toronto. I used to live in Toronto. 7 years ago, I said I've had enough of Toronto, and I moved to Victoria, BC. And I have a very small studio that I'm in right now. I can show it to you. I just have a computer and a mixing board over here and some technology that connects me to Toronto. My microphone here that I speak into. I don't know if you can see that. So there's my mic. On Monday, the 4 producers get together and they have a story meeting. And all of them independently have been just cruising around the internet. We get stuff sent to us from universities, scientific journals. We get embargoed stories that are sent to us in advance because we're the press. And they discuss which stories they think would be good for our show. And we like it to be Canadian when we can. We try to keep at least one story Canadian. And we also like to keep one story in the show with a woman scientist, which isn't always easy. So they find the scientists, phone them up, and carry out a pre-interview with them. Then they gather up all that information, and they write a 1-page summary for me that describes what this story is. I call the producer and go over it to make sure that I understand the story, and they help explain it to me because they know it better than I do. And then we hook up with the scientist. And we can connect to scientists anywhere in the world. So I'll connect with a scientist who might be in Berlin. And I'll say, well, good morning, Dr. So-and-so. How is it in Berlin today? Well, it's kind of rainy here. It's not very, okay, well. And, how was your trip to the studio? Chat with them a bit just to get them relaxed, get them used to my voice. And then we pre-record the interview. So I begin, I go through the interview. The interview could last 15 to 20 minutes. My producer can talk to me without the guest hearing it. So I'll do all the interviews on Wednesday and Thursday. Friday, we assemble the whole thing, put it all together into a show, and it goes to air Saturday.
What are the responsibilities of science journalists today, and how have those responsibilities evolved?
The responsibility of all journalists is to get it right. Science is simply trying to, here's the truth, here's what it is. This is our climate record. That's it. It just stands on its own, and the truth cannot be argued with. So that's the first thing that a journalist has to do, is make sure that they're talking to a scientist who is qualified to be talking about it, who is an expert on it, and not just an opinion.
I'm just wondering what you do to make science accessible and what techniques you use in that regard.
Well, first of all, it's mostly because I'm not actually a scientist myself. I'm just a person with an infinite fascination with the subject. Every question that I ask, I actually know the answer to. So I'm listening. I'm always listening to make sure that that answer is coming out. And if it's not, if the person gets really technical and they start using all kinds of scientific jargon, then I'm thinking, okay, what's this mean? And sometimes on the show, you'll hear me say, let me see if I got this right. So I try to spin it back to them, repeat what they just said in one sentence. And I'm very visual in my thinking, so I'll try to use an analogy of some kind. That pictures it for me, makes sure that I'm right, that I've got the story right, but it also brings you, the audience, in.
Do you find that the role of accessibility has changed, or has it remained kind of at a constant level of importance?
The pseudoscientists, a lot of them are very well funded, and they'll put doubt in people's minds, and they'll take advantage of the fact that science is never 100% certain. It's an ongoing process. You're always learning, which means that there's a little bit of uncertainty, but we're pretty sure we're right. So the pseudoscientists say, oh, well, those scientists they're uncertain, so don't trust them. If they're uncertain, believe me, because I know. So the scientist has to speak up more clearly, and scientists are reluctant to do that. Their job is in the lab. They don't like speaking up too much, and they don't want to get in trouble because they'll lose their grants. So it's hard. So the journalists are the ones who have to speak out and point out those discrepancies.
How do you know when a source is credible when you don't necessarily have the ability to speak to the scientist who is involved?
Well, you look at the scientific paper, or if you're reading an online journal or an article about it, there's always a link to the source. So follow that link. Even if you don't talk to the scientists, find them. If they say they're from a university, go to the university's website and look them up and see if they're there. Just do some digging. Do some digging. Don't take things just on the surface. And if you find out that they work for an oil company, and they're talking about climate change, then they're probably skewed in their perception of things. Do your homework, dig for your sources, and make sure that they're the real people.
What advice would you have for aspiring science journalists given the evolution of journalism?
There are two routes. One is to take journalism courses, like Ryerson or Carleton University has a science journalism department. King's College in Nova Scotia, there's a number of them across the country that will teach you the tools of the trade. And we take interns from the journalism schools who come into the CBC, and they have to hit the ground running. We don't do the training. They have to come to us already trained, already know how to do it, and we put them to work as producers right away. The other way is to just do it, but do not go to your favorite medium, send them a letter or an application form and say, I want to be a science journalist. What you have to do is to go to them with a story that you know well, and say, you should be covering this story, and I should be covering it for you. And you'll get their ear. Look at their format and try to write something in their format ahead of time. Don't just give them an idea. Try to give them a story, or as much of it as you can. Good outline. NASA sent a spacecraft out to Saturn, and I've always been interested in space. So I went to California to watch the spacecraft fly by Saturn. While I was there, the public relations person from NASA came up to me with a big package and said, do you know we also sent a spacecraft to Venus? So NASA sent this radar there that could see through the clouds, and they made the first map of the surface of Venus. So this was historic. At that time, the Globe and Mail had a science page every Thursday. And I figured they'd be covering this because they're the Globe and Mail. They know everything, right? I got a Globe and Mail, and I looked, and it wasn't there. So I looked up the Globe and Mail phone number, and I just phoned them, the general number. And I said, do you have a science editor? Yes, one moment, please. Click, I get this guy. Yeah, what do you want? I said, hi, I've just come from California. Are you doing anything on the Pioneer Venus probe? He said, what's that? I said, what's that? Are you crazy? We've just seen through the clouds of Venus. I've got this package. You should be doing this. He said, so why don't you do it? I went, what? He said, yeah, write it up and send it in. I'm really busy. I can't talk to you. I got to go. Bye. Click, and he hung up on me. So I sat down. Venus Revealed by Bob McDonald. Then I went to the Globe and Mail personally, and I found the guy that I'd been talking on the phone. And I went right up to his desk and I said, hi, I'm the guy that told you about the Venus story. And I showed him the pictures. I said, here they are. Here's why this is important. These are right from NASA, and here's my story. He said, great. I'll get back to you in a couple days. And I waited. And I didn't hear from him. And I waited and I waited and I never heard from him. And I thought, oh, he hated it. Who am I to think I could write for the Globe and Mail? So the next Thursday I went and I got a Globe and Mail newspaper. I opened up the science page, the whole top half, Venus Revealed by Bob McDonald. He published the whole thing. So I called the guy back. I said, hey, thanks for publishing my Venus story. He said, you're welcome. Do you have any more? He never said, who are you? Where did you go to school? What were your grades? What are your qualifications? He never asked me that. He said, do you have a story?
How do you make your stories original or stand out in a unique way?
We have scientists who are experts in their field telling us what they know. So we don't do commentaries and stuff like that. We do the science facts. And that seems to work. Quirks and Quarks has been on the air now for more than 42 years. And I've been the host of it for more than 25. And throughout all of that time, our ratings have never fallen. So the public is interested in just pure science. We need to understand fundamentals, real basic stuff. How do things work? Because once you understand something, like how heat moves from one place to another, not only do you understand the weather, you understand ocean currents, you understand fundamental principles like that. And I think we need more of it. I find some young people are information rich, but knowledge poor. The information is on your device. You can look anything up. But is it in here? Is there a fundamental understanding of how things work? So I've had young people tell me lots of things about the moon, but they don't understand that the moon goes around the Earth, and the Earth and moon go around the sun. They don't get that. So, but they know stuff about the moon. So it's just information, but not the knowledge of how the whole system works. So fundamental science is really important to understand as well, and we try to do that too.
Well, thank you again. I really do appreciate it.